Okay, so this video is a tutorial on the second section of Mission 1 called Familiar Faces. If you already feel comfortable completing and building a phylogenetic tree, you do not need to watch this video. Feel free to just continue on your own. So to complete this section of Mission 1, I'm going to hit play. Mine says replay because it has already been completed. And again, just to refresh your memory, at the bottom of the screen will be all of the organisms that you need to put into your phylogenetic tree as you build it. And on the left side of the screen are all the traits that you also need to add. So this one has 3 traits and 4 organisms. If I click on the hand lens at the bottom right, I can read more about the organisms. So I'm going to do that first. And my first is a dog. And remember, at the top here, it kind of gives you a summary of all the important key pieces of information about each organism. So a dog is an amniote, and I am assuming most of you do not know what that means. However, there is a section in here that you'll be able to understand what that is, so I'm going to hold off. A dog is also a vertebrate, which we are also vertebrates, meaning they have a backbone or a spine. And a dog also displays bilateral symmetry, which means the left and right halves of the body look the same. Let's click on the goldfish. The goldfish is also a vertebrate, and it also displays bilateral symmetry. The only thing that the goldfish doesn't have that the dog had was this amniote thing, which we still don't know what that means. The third is the king snake. The king snake is an amniote, it is a vertebrate, and it displays bilateral symmetry, which is all the same things as the dog. So I'm already noticing that the king snake and the dog have a lot in common. The last one is the stick insect, which the only trait that it has that the others also have is it displays bilateral symmetry. So right off the bat, I notice that all 4 have bilateral symmetry. That's the one trait they all have in common. And then the other key idea that I noticed was that the dog and the king snake have everything in common. Okay, then I'm going to go back to the last thing, which is the species comparison. And this tells us what amniotes are. So it says, amniotes describe the vertebrate animals whose embryos develop inside the set of protective membranes pictured here. These membranes help reptiles and birds lay their eggs on land. They're also found inside mammals, including those that lay eggs like the platypus, those with pouches like the koala, and those with placentas like us. So we are also an amniote. It just means that they develop inside like a sac membrane, like we develop inside our mom. Okay, so back to my tree. And the first key point that I remember from reading about was that the dog and the king snake had everything in common. So I'm going to put those 2 on my tree first. And I'm going to put them so that they're side by side because they shared all 3 traits. The next is the stick insect. And if we remember, if I click on the stick insect, the only thing it had similar to all the other organisms was that it displays bilateral symmetry. So I'm going to put the stick insect kind of out on its own. So you'll notice it has a branch that connects it to the other 2, the dog and the king snake, which means it is similar. However, it's not as similar as these 2, so that's why we put it on its own branch. And then the last one is the goldfish. And let's recall what the goldfish traits were. So it's a vertebrate, and it has bilateral symmetry. That's the same as the dog and the king snake. However, it's not an amniote. So it's still closely related to the dog and the king snake. However, not as close. So we got to figure out a way to attach it into this tree. Now, doesn't share any other traits with the stick insect, so we can't do this. If we do this, that puts it closer related to the king snake, and that's not what we want either. If we do this, it puts it closer related to the dog, and that's also not what we want. We want it on its own branch separate from the dog and the king snake. So I'm just going to go a little bit lower so it creates a branch out from there, which puts these 3 kind of in a similar category. and then the stick insect on its own. But then it also puts the dog and the king snake in its own separate category aside from the goldfish. Now all I have to do is put in 3 traits. Now, the one trait that they all had in common was bilateral symmetry. So I know that that's going to go at the bottom. And it went to all of them, so that's good. Then my next trait I'm going to choose is the vertebrate trait. And the king snake, the dog, and the goldfish all were vertebrates. So I'm going to put that here so it goes to all 3 of those. And then the amniote, which was only the dog and the king snake, goes there. That should be good. All I have to do is answer my question, and then remember, do not move on until you've answered the questions for this section in your assignment. So you'll have to answer these 3 questions for familiar faces, and then you're finished.